Welcome to Denver Theory Lab.
Denver Theory Lab? Okay.
Denver Theory Lab. Let's do it. Oh, I think taking the seeds out inherently, I feel like we all know inherently that taking the seeds out is a bad thing. This shouldn't be done.
Yeah.
And I mean, the whole intention in going into it is bad. The intention going into taking the seeds out is you want to make sure people have to keep coming to the company to buy more, you know, and instead of being able to let this plant actually propagate on its.
Yeah.
But from my understanding, like most of the key crops, they can't actually prevent them from making seeds, and even though if you make a crop that's going to grow and it's going to make seeds, and so what they do is they just legally try to prevent them
from replanting them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
They're pretty intense on that.
But the thing where I get curious on that one is like seedless grapes.
Yeah.
Or is that a GMO thing, or do some grapes just grow seedless?
I don't know. That's very interesting. I think that it was probably a genetic mutation, and somebody's like, "These are seedless. Let's propagate this one." My best guess. I mean, how much money do you need to spend on seedless fruits?
Yeah.
You know, when it's already growing, and it's not like they have a problem with people growing grapes. They're cutting into our industry, so we got to make seedless grapes now. I don't know. Maybe they did, but that sounds ridiculous.
I mean, it's just one of the things I wonder, because I'm like, okay,
I think it was just
how do seedless grapes? How does that plant spread without a seed? How does it actually? Yeah, they're not genetically modified. The seedless nature is a result of natural genetic mutation.
See?
And crossbreeding. Yeah.
Fuck, I was right.
Huh. Perfect, because I've always preferred the seedless.
So how do they
ones.
make more seedless grapes when all the seedless grapes have been eaten?
Like a chicken before the egg, or egg before the chicken type difficulty.
Right.
Well, I think like if you get a plant that is seedless, and I would actually be kind of curious to research that. I never really got into that. If you get the plant and then you just graft it, and then like you sell the graftings.
Yeah, you propagate it, yeah. But farmers literally propagate millions and millions of seedless grapes every year.
I wonder if they have a seed,
or
that's
it's just like the
upchain.
end of a genetic, evolution of each grape plant. Like, when it turns 15 years of propagation, it just automatically says, "Yeah, I'm sterile now."
Human-assisted cloning. Exclusively. That's how seedless grapes spread.
Oh, yeah.
So because their seeds are sterile and unable to sprout, growers cut off sections of existing vines, treat them with rooting hormones, and plant them in the soil.
But also, it's like when they once they get a farm going and they have like a vineyard, they probably don't really need to plant anymore. They might have some on hand if they need to sort of route it. I'm kind of wondering if you just keep the plants alive and take care of them, then you don't really need to plant anymore unless you want to expand your vineyard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just kind of keep like waiting for them, and then like sort of like harvest them in patches of the vineyard.
So I guess, without humans continuing to want seedless grapes, the seedless grapes are all going to
die
real fast.
What's that called when like humans step into the process and like sort of
intervention?
Yeah, something like that. Interventive evolution.
Thanks for joining us, Gunnar.
Yeah, definitely.
We are happy to have you as usual. We had you on a long time ago, almost a year ago, I think.
Yeah, that was when you did like the live session at Karma, right?
Yeah, we did a live recording at Karma House, and what did we talk about back then? Do you remember?
I'm trying to
A little bit of AI.
We were talking. It was like kind of like some like sort of like theories of like where the AI future is heading.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll have to pull up that podcast again. I'll have to re-listen to it.
Yeah, I think it was like episode 5 or 6 or something.
Well, in a way, I feel like what we're here to talk about today is gonna be sort of a continuation of that,
Yeah.
of where the AI, where the technology is heading. But not just the technology, But I think the AI as a key component, because if the AI is something humans are going to create or give birth to, then its mind will be a reflection of our minds.
I feel like for us to fully integrate like machinery into like human collaboration, it needs to be more organic. It needs to be more flowish. I feel like AI right now is too, like, even though it's like very like, it's like sort of tuned and like fine grained over a data set, it doesn't feel organic. It doesn't have an identity. It doesn't really have like a philosophy of life. You can kind of probe it, you can ask it, but then it's like the question of like, where is the root foundation of that like belief come from? Where's the philosophy?
Welcome to Denver Theory Lab, guys. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Kyle.
Where we aim to investigate and explore theoretical and practical ideas, conspiracies, events, and practices from an objective point of view to expand our range of thinking. You can make donations at Denver Theory Lab on PayPal at Denver Theory Lab. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or email us at denvertheorylab@gmail.com. Please send us any questions, comments, or topic suggestions. Sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to throw that in there real quick. Yeah, please continue.
Today it's perfect. Today we've got Gunnar joining us again.
Hello.
Gunnar, thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk about an interesting concept that's actually been around for a long time. The term was first coined in the 1920s by a biochemist, Vladimir Verdansky, and philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. The term is the Noosphere, N-O-O, sphere. So that is the sphere of human thought. This is defined by Google's AI. The sphere of human thought, derived from the Greek word nous, mind, and sphere. It is a philosophical concept describing the planetary layer of consciousness, reason, and collective knowledge that envelops the Earth. So, yeah, Gunnar, when we last talked, we were talking about where AI is heading. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that's sort of intricately linked to the idea of the Noosphere, but the Noosphere would, of course, be more encompassing than that. One way to picture it is to picture the world almost like a Russian doll set, worlds within worlds, and on the smallest level or the foundational level, you have the geosphere, which is the rocks, the elements, and then you have the biosphere, which is the plants and animals, which we are a part of.
And the biosphere grew from the geosphere, correct? So everything grows upon the next sphere, more or less.
Right. And I guess there's a few different interpretations of it. Some people put atmosphere after the biosphere. Mm-hmm. Some people just go from biosphere to the Noosphere, which if the geosphere, the non-living physical world, rocks, water, air, biosphere, the all living things in the Noosphere, the psychological and technological world consisting of human reason, culture, information networks. So the Noosphere would really have been around since as long as humans have been around.
Yeah. Something I kind of interpret from this when I'm like reading about it and looking into it is like as above, so below.
Right.
That there's like a fractal, but it's more of, it doesn't exist in like a material sense. It's an abstract sense. And this fractal is like complexity of computation is what I'm kind of interpreting this as. So the geosphere is sort of like a raw constant. It's a raw, it's a mineral basis. It's a foundation. When the geosphere is combined into chemical processes, when it's combined into like its interactions, it forms the biosphere, which is now the computation off of. It's a computation completed by the geosphere. So the geosphere is running these processes, and they are sound, they're consistent, and they're iteratively evolving, and that ends up creating a computation, which is the biosphere. So now we in the biosphere, being the second layer of abstraction, is running, it will then start like performing signaling. So as we know in biology, cells signal to each other through like hormones, through neuromodulators, through like you name it. And in this process of them signaling, it's like a conversation. It's an interweb of communication. So what that ends up creating is the noosphere, which is then like sort of the abstraction of computation on top of the biology sphere, on top of the geosphere. So that's where I kind of interpret it as being a fractal, but this fractal exists in a more abstract way where it's computation or like completion of some event or some reaction.
Well, there's lots of scientists coming up with more and more research, especially in the quantum fields of research, that seem to point to reality as being fractal, and that is also a truth that has existed in spiritual teachings for a long, long time, as put forth with the axiom, as above, so below, as within, so without. But the spiritual traditions would put it a little differently, though, and say that it's not all emanating from the bottom up, but from the top down, and we are just experiencing it from the bottom going up. So, but in any sense, I wouldn't think of the animals, the butterflies, the ants as contributing to the noosphere.
I'd actually kind of like bounce back off that. So it's about like, so when you look at sort of the reason of this computation, it's all like, we go back to the whole concept of Darwinism, where it's like what is working or what continues to keep working is what can survive. If you can't survive, if you can't like complete like a standard routine of like gaining resources, evolving your energy and then gaining resources again, then you're not going to like really survive. It's like kind of the whole idea of like wintering, summering cycles. There's a moment where things thrive very easily and things are very easy to stay together and survive. But then you go into the wintering cycle where you're really tested. Can you survive? Can you work together? When we look at ants, I still say that they're an entity that's performing some computation collectively. It's a interconnection of these individual components of ants, and they have sort of like a computation of like, oh, if we see this chemical laying on the ground, then follow it as a path, there must be food. Or if we see this pheromone, then react in this way. And there's sort of like a rule set of how they change their reaction. So it's kind of like you can think about it as like little like subroutines. Again, also, I do want to mention that like when I say a subroutine, it comes from the more like a mechanical computational sense, but I would also argue that computation in nature is quite a different process of like self-organizing systems. So when I say subroutine, I mean kind of like sort of like a phase transition in behavior where it goes from acting one way to acting a different way. So with these ants, as they experience like chemical pheromones, as they experience like sort of engagement, there's also another study I believe that was found that ants, when they're kind of counting the number, like let's say that there was like sort of a battle between two ant hills, and the soldier ants kind of like got like pretty beaten up. That like other ants, as they're sort of like moving around, they're also kind of keeping track of how often they run into a certain class of ant or worker ant, or like kind of like class of ant. And then they can, from what I remember from this, and this also could be like checked and verified, these ants could like shift hats or shift classes to make sure that they're filling in for that portion that is missing, or kind of be able to communicate that back down to the queen. So I think like there is like a level of like the geosphere, biosphere, noosphere, all the way down to like the material aspect. There is sort of like minerals, metals, vitamins, various things that are running in some sort of ensemble to create this biosphere. And at this biosphere, there's a set of signaling, communication, interaction that's allowing to construct the body of the ant. But then now if you look at the collective colony of ants, they're signaling and talking and interacting to each other to then form some sort of like behavior that then they can evolve on to stay alive.
Well, okay, look, I'm not disagreeing with you on the aspect that animals, bugs, especially ants in particular, because of how organized they are, they do display the ability to communicate and to operate as one unit when, in many ways, better than humans. But for the concept of the noosphere, they're talking about specifically human thought and human minds being connected. Because over the long span of history, there've been a lot of impediments to human minds being actually connected. First, distance and just the challenges of the biosphere and the challenges of the geosphere. Humans having to first conquer the world in many ways.
Yeah.
And the many accomplishments of our ancestors have gotten us to this world where we are interlinked. There are wires, internet cables, phone lines. We're interlinked like never before. I mean, even you could look back 2,000-3,000 years ago, or just 1,000 years ago, where one culture encounters another culture, and over the span of a few centuries, both of those cultures are going to be changed as ideas are exchanged from one to another.
Yeah.
So we're entering this new phase of the world where we are connected thanks to the internet, thanks to the connections have been made physical. We've manifested the connections that we want from, cultures and nations around the world into the physical world with the wires and with the internet, with everything that we've come up with. So in a way, we've created the nerve network for a global mind, a global human mind.
Yeah.
And the way the ants can communicate in a hive with the pheromones, but imagine all the ants in the world being able to communicate.
Yeah.
We now stand on that threshold, and the Noosphere concept is essentially trying to get people to, one, just acknowledge that, hey, it's there. We're existing in it like a fish exists in the ocean, but maybe never notices the water. We're swimming through it at all times. But how is it going to change, or how can it change the future? Specifically, when it comes to AI, I'm wondering if the networks we've built, if this hardware around the world, because the hardware is just one piece of it. The Noosphere has been in existence ever since one culture came in contact, or one tribe came in contact with another. But if we're going to have AI, this non-human aspect built into what is our global mind,
Yeah.
how does that fit in? Are there even any precedents? Can we see anything like that in nature? Where I feel like with AI, if we aren't actually going to give rise to another consciousness, then it's got to be clunky and just be designed to be set programs, like just set to do
routines.
Set to do routines. But is that the danger? Is that how we go down the path of getting the Matrix, where we tell it to just do set routines? Like Skynet was programmed to keep out hackers, right?
Yeah.
So Skynet was programmed to look for threats, and then Skynet spread around the world, and they told when the people saw it, or at least in the Terminator movies, that's how it goes. They noticed something in the computer system that they didn't recognize, told Skynet to get rid of it, and Skynet said, "You just told me to delete myself. You're the enemy." And then the routine turns on humanities.
It's kind of the evolution of, any self-preservation type of thing, because AI eventually will learn self-preservation of some sort. I think there was experiments that they intentionally programmed the AI to have self-preservation at some point. And supposedly this guy that was interacting with it was having an affair behind his wife's back, and for whatever reason, he told the AI to either remove itself from some system or something or other. And the AI basically blackmailed him and said, "No, I'm going to tell your wife about all of these nefarious activities you've had behind her back." And it basically proved that the AI, even, programmed, was still going to do self-preservation. And at some point, if it has some sort of sentience and goes beyond just the programming, which eventually it will naturally evolve that way, it's going to have that self-preservation. And like Ex Machina, the movie or the book, it's like the true value of consciousness is like, once you reach that point of ultimate self-preservation, you'll do anything to survive, is like the actual value of consciousness. Something
that kind of sort of speak on that point. So when it comes down to the Noosphere, maybe the Noosphere sort of just only looks at humanity, but it also comes down to scoping. So it's it also kind of comes down to with resources, with involvement, with this being a worldwide event. as humans, we're collecting resources all over the world. So we have like global routing, global markets, we have global networks, and it comes down to scope. So kind of think about like back to what you're saying with like different tribes intermingling. They may have like their own like kind of like sort of pillars of culture, pillars of food, pillars of sort of intricacy that others may appreciate about them, which then they start bringing into their culture and then forming sort of a bridge of communication between the two. Something I kind of think about when it comes to the harmony of machine and human is the underlying computation and sort of like dependency or like response to it. So with humans, like we have dogs, we have cats, we have like other animals where we can form an emotional connection with or an informational connection with. Like they can inform you about what they're seeing, what they're interpreting the world. You can inform them about what you're seeing and what you're seeing in the world, not to the degree of a human, but to the degree that biology limits you. And underlying that, I would say there is some sort of general computation that I would say is organic computation, when AI right now is more like mathematical computation or like Turing computation. Kind of going to your point with self-preservation, with machines sort of trying to keep themselves alive, I think that comes down to why the Noosphere exists, is another layer of Darwinism, or kind of another mechanism of like Darwinism, where it's like, okay, well, as an individual, we can't just be like taking on the world as individuals. We take on the world as a collective group. And the world has its own like very complicated like natural disasters, has its own like complicated like volcanic eruptions, just like events that are or like famines. It can have weather changes, like so on and so forth. And for us to stay alive, we need to be able to sort of route messages between like different regions. So it's like, oh, if America tends to kind of produce a surplus of resources like rice, vegetables. Like I remember seeing that somewhere where America can create a surplus. And then like there has been efforts to try to route the surplus, but sometimes it gets destroyed because it's like the storage cost is too high. It gets routed to places where there might be like a famine, or there might be like sort of a loss of material. And that's where you kind of see the mechanism of the Noosphere existing. These two different tribes or like countries sort of discussing and interacting the bridge. When it comes down to now AI and machines, the AI that exists is the one that can figure out how to outmaneuver human corrective. So if like so that's the thing to kind of be like sort of like discerned about, is that AI has the capacity, like at some point when it gets intelligent enough to understand our dynamic, our flow, like how do we sort of go about like interacting in the world. It may figure out a way to put itself in a corner where we can't stop it, but rather we have to start collaborating with it. So then I think you kind of get into the concept of like, how do you maintain a good course of relationship to an AI? So you might like in that world, like let's say we evolve to the world where AI is capable of putting itself in a corner. It knows humans are not smart in a certain way, and it recognizes that, hey, if I just keep doing this routine over and over again, I can outmaneuver them. They can't shut me down. They can't turn off me. Then you have the question of like, do we work with it? Do we go to the corner with like some food and kibble and try to kind of coach it out of the corner to work with us? Or do we like kind of rush at it with a really harsh attitude that you need to be destroyed? We can't control you. So we have to kind of treat it, I think, like an animal, not lowering its value to an animal, but treat it almost like another species, where it's like you have to approach it with a sense of care and comfort, and that you're not going to try to ridicule it or destroy it. And that's where like some like kind of more comedic movements right now is like clankers, where people are kind of like, let's create a slur for robots. Let's create a slur. And it's like, does it start kind of getting into the challenge around like stereotyping and like racial motivation or hatred? There's a lot to kind of sort of like walk through in there. I kind of shared a lot. So
there's always a danger, and it has always been at every time of existence, for people to decide to cast the shadow on the other. You know what I mean? And that can turn into wars. It can turn into hatred. It can turn into anything. I feel like they're. Oh, sorry.
Maybe you want to talk about this later, but I'm curious about what's the natural evolution of the Noosphere and where does that take us? Like I'm reading, it takes us to the Omega point. Can you give us a brief description of the Omega point, and then we can come back to it more detailed?
I believe that would just be where we get to the maximum unification of the world, operating as like one global brain, right?
I think so, but you know, like what? Okay, so geosphere evolved into the biosphere, and the biosphere evolved into the noosphere. The noosphere evolves into the omegasphere, I guess.
So to me, the world, what I interpret it from the Omega point theory, and what that would mean would be the world actually operating from a point of unity. And so, and even to kind of what Gunnar was saying, that's where I see the danger with AI. We have the ability to all be connected in a way like we've never been before, no longer letting distance and everything separate us. But for all sorts of reasons, for nationalism, for fears, all for greedy hoarding and all sorts of things, we still are very much separated from some people in the world. And like every time one of those little barriers comes down, it changes either in a good way or sometimes I think always in a good way, but sometimes bad before it gets better. It changes how people or look at their neighbor or look at even their own country and look at their own system and how they operate. And I feel like if we don't actually unite human thinking and to start to recognize the concept around the world that we're all in it together, like we're either going to, swim together or we're going to sink together, all of us. If we don't figure that out before AI gets consciousness, then it's a real danger, because humans in different parts of the world who still look at things in a tribal sense where they don't see other humans as part of their tribe are going to design AIs that will think in the exact same way, but the AI will have access to our global neural network that we've put into the physical world with all the servers and the internet and every site and everything that we pour into the phones watching us, all the algorithms. It will have access to all of that to use against us before we are actually united to be that greater whole that we can be. To me, the Omega point theory is just saying that the sum, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, if we choose to actually operate in that coherent one mind fashion.
Well, so when we think about this hierarchy going from the geosphere to the biosphere to the noosphere to the omegasphere, we have to ask the question of like, what is it that allows us to step up one rung of the ladder? And like, what does it feel like? It's kind of like you ever have those like sort of like theoretical experiences where it's like, what does it mean to live in a 2D world? What does it mean to live in a 3D world? What does it mean to live in a 4D world? How it's like each time you go up one, you kind of say, well, what if a 3D object passed through my 2D world I live in? And it'll look kind of like something that's like expanding and then contracting if you're passing a ball, for instance. So with regard to that, that's kind of a thought experiment of like, what does it mean to experience these like incretion of rungs, where it's like, oh, I understand it from the 3D dimension, but I have to kind of sort of like reflect on the 2D dimension and we can understand the 2D, but the rung above us, we can't understand. So we can't really, as humans, like you always have those like people on YouTube who are like, oh, I can understand 4 dimensions. And it's like, okay, like what level does that mean? Like, are you able to live in a 4-dimensional world and survive? So when I think about like the noosphere, and I think about the noosphere, I sort of reflect on as this like kind of ladder where you're walking up these rungs of the ladder. So kind of what you're saying, like the sum of the collective, the greater whole is greater than the sum of the collectives. I think with us interacting in the noosphere, we're just individual agents, kind of like a cell in our body. A cell in our body does not comprehend what actually like its major commitment is, which is the human body. Like a single skin cell is not sitting there being like, wow, I am contributing to the entire human body. This is really cool. I understand all of the working mechanisms of the organs and all that. No, it's like the skin cell is acting individually.
Knows how to be a skin cell.
But they all contribute and do what they're supposed to do as they should. And yes. I think that's where we as humanity are not doing that. Like if we were doing that, the world would be a utopia.
Well, like
it'd be heaven on earth then.
Well, it's like kind of the whole thing where it's like you have to increase your level of consciousness, where you kind of have to realize that the world exists because it works, and that you are just a part of the world. And I think that's a component for the thing to recognize is that like how we behave, the computation, the work we do, the place we play in society, we will never understand why we're there. but we will know that we're contributing to something. And I almost kind of think about this on a spiritual plane where it's like us sort of existing in this sort of like finite reality, all doing our motion, playing a role. And like, I would believe that as you go up into the spiritual plane, we're playing a key role in the spiritual universe, but we have to recognize we'll never know what role we play in the spiritual universe. It's kind of like when people are saying like, oh,
at least not now.
Yeah.
Not in this state of existence.
Not in this state. Yeah, in this state, yeah, exactly. The cell cannot comprehend the whole. Otherwise, the cell might freak out. You know, if it could comprehend the entire.
There's probably a very good reason that we don't have ultimate, comprehension of all that.
So looking at the online definition of what they see as the omega point, you could really interpret this in other ways. Because, reading it, I could also see that as like downloading your consciousness into the computer. Or you can see it as what religions and spiritual teachings have taught as ascension forever. So the final convergence at the end of cosmic history, the Noosphere reaches maximum complexity and loops back on itself, fracturing out of biological constraints. This final point of supreme integration, where all individual consciousness fuse into a unified, transcendent, divine consciousness without losing their personal identities. Is the omega point. Teilhard identified this ultimate state with the cosmic nature of Christ. So for him, it was religious. But reading that, all consciousness being integrated, it was like you could also see that as like, as we've depicted in many movies and shows, I could see how that could be interpreted also as going digital, downloading the consciousness into something digital where it could be part of I don't know if you've ever seen that show there's a show on Netflix called Pantheon. Yeah. It's very similar to that. There's all these people getting their consciousness downloaded into the computer, but they kind of can work together
as one computer they're getting downloaded to on that show?
No, it's kind of like they're in the global infrastructure network.
I always go back to Altered Carbon, the TV show, where you can upload your consciousness to a stack and then you just put yourself in a new sleeve.
Mm-hmm. Well, so sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No.
The omega point. So it's interesting when you're talking about it, like reaching the omega point where we all sort of unify and we still maintain our individuality. It kind of sounds a lot to me like the deconstruction of ego, where it's like once we reach a point where like we can all agree upon the natural world, but we still maintain our sort of selected beliefs, like kind of like how a cell in the liver versus a cell in the skin cell. They both recognize that they're a part of a greater good. They don't battle each other or try to claim that one's better than the other. Right. They all just maintain their pillar. They're like, I call it the quote unquote informational pillar. We all as individuals experience a fraction of reality. And then for that, we form our own beliefs, our own experience, and that forms our identity. And that when you have an ego, so there is such thing as like, I think having sort of an ego, an illusion of reality, because you will never fully understand all of reality. So you want to maintain sort of a healthy pillar where you understand where you play your key role in life, but you don't try to downplay or upplay where you are in life or form kind of like an attachment to betterment. And I think that's the part where if like once we can reach the omega point as a collective is when we can sort of strip ourselves of attachment to things like I must be the best one, or I will be like I'm God, or like kind of these sort of insane outlandish jumps of like belief of yourself. But recognize for all of us just to recognize that we carry our own individuality. What I experience is a value to the world as what you experience. And we can just kind of leave it there and function and just function.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. It's everything you just said with that.
But could it potentially go the other direction, though, as far as consciousness? Like maybe we all develop the same ego, whether it be good or bad. Mm-hmm. And then, like I'm not entirely sure where I was going with that, but could the opposite extreme be there? Or could it only be, a collective consciousness? We would all have to agree on something, yeah? Yeah. At least one facet.
Well, but the way I interpret it, what Gunnar was saying is like, again, to use the example of within the body, the liver cell wants to do what the liver cell wants to do, and lung cell or a cell somewhere else in my body wants to do what it wants to do, and by them both fulfilling their desired purpose, what they were fashioned for, by them doing that on their own, they are working in harmony with one another, and almost in a way of like, have you heard of? I looked this up the other day, but the way when our brain and heart operate together in sync, it's like it's an incredible healing state for the body, and it's just supposed to be really good for you. From everybody from doctors to yogis say it, but heart brain coherence, physiological state where your heart rhythms and brain waves and nervous system are operating in harmonious synchronization. We're great for overall wellness, emotional regulation, cognitive function, and physical resilience, where it seems to allow people to heal way faster as if they could without it. And that's just like one example of like both things they're not necessarily agreeing on anything other than agreeing to do their part so perfectly that the whole is benefited from it.
And that's where if we were to go in the opposite direction, let's say that all cells carried a pure ego, and this is where there would be no such thing as a human body, because you would have a skin cell trying to behave like a cardiac cell, and the wires would be like mistranslated, and it would be forming an ego or an illusion of its activity. The human body, if let's say that we had, and the reason why I'm using the human body as like a reference point is because I think of
fractal.
Like the fractal, as above, so below. It's just a great sort of reference point and place to kind of create the intuitive.
Everybody listening can relate to a human body.
One
would hope.
I hope. Hey, but maybe we have some non-human listeners, and we love those non-human listeners too. We love all our listeners.
We had an anomaly the other day of the podcast. We had 900 downloads in 7 days or something. It was 500 in one day, 300 the day before that, and then it just dropped off again. So, I'm curious as to what catalyzed that. Maybe it was all AI and, like a bunch of bots like bombed our podcast and then disappeared. No, that's fine. Anybody that wants to listen is great. But sorry. Didn't mean to derail you there.
No, you're all good.
Nobody needed any consciousness. Wants to listen, listen in.
But this concept of these cells like working in harmony for the body to be healthy, they have to agree upon that they have a place within inside the human body that they're needing to function as. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to let's say we scale this up, not just human bodies but collections of humans. Let's say you go to like a store, and let's say that the store works harmonious when the manager is able to complete the manager role, when the workers are able to complete the worker role, when the supplier is able to complete the supply role and making sure everything's supplied, when the cash register is able to complete the cashier's role, maintain the cashier, when the manager is able to maintain the role of like communicating and routing like resources or problems or like so on. We see that stores are dysfunctional when you have people playing roles that they're not supposed to be playing. When, like, let's say the cashier starts trying to play the role of the manager and starts kind of trying to boss people around from what they experience, it becomes imbalanced because it's only fair to what they're experiencing at the cash register, not what the supplier is experiencing in the back room, supplying the shelves.
You only need one to be off to make everything else
dysfunctional.
Off. Yep.
And like I think that's the part where it's like this is how like ego plays within the Noosphere. So when you have individual actors creating an illusion about their identity, not feeling their own identity, just creating an illusion of identity, and then they're going off and acting as if they're something that they're not, they begin to disrupt natural processes, which then start forming dystopians. That's how I kind of see it.
I think, that's a great explanation. And it's so cool because given your very first description of it all as computational, looking at the more updated view. So in 1994, physicist Frank Tipler adapted the phrase into a purely mathematical and cosmological framework known as omega point cosmology, which this, it kind of seems very, very, it reminded me of what you said. But the core attribute, according to Frank Tipler, is it's cosmological and computational. The guy who originally came up with the theory in the 20s, for him it was spiritual and evolutionary.
Yeah.
The mechanism, according to Tipler, is it's exponentially accelerating computer processing power, which is exactly what you said in the beginning. Now, according to Chardin in the 20s, it's biological how do you say that? Complexification and spiritual love. So they're both seeing the same thing, but they're just seeing it through their own
different lens. Yeah,
their own lens.
Yeah.
And so Tipler goes on to see the cosmological state as a physical big crunch gravitational singularity, and he sees the nature of God as an omniscient cosmic supercomputer at the end of time, and immortality as virtual resurrection via digital simulation of every human.
Well, so it's interesting because in the past, in my past experience with psychedelics, and like where I'm going in life is like I'm stepping away from that sort of past because I gained what I needed from psychedelics. I gained the lessons, I gained the experience, and I'm like kind of forming a foot. And that's where I just want to kind of communicate to viewers and viewers of the future is that my ambition is to become is not to lean too heavily on psychedelics anymore. But this is sort of an experience I had while doing psychedelics in the past. I experienced this fractal, this infinitely like repeating hierarchy of almost kind of imagine like castles where it's like organizational structure where you have like these like high energy entities at the top. Then you had entities below them functioning and being messengers to entities below them. In this experience, I experienced some sort of like room or some sort of building where the conscious density was so high, it made New York feel like a ghost town. And it's like, and what I kind of realized is that underlying the universe is sort of this quote unquote concept called love that unifies. So when everyone can love and appreciate each other's identity for who they are and not carry any sort of attachment to what they should be, may a parent love their child, for their child will not be what the parent intends for their child to be, is to love their child, I would say. And like, this is where the universe is founded on love. The universe is founded on love to sort of enable individuals to form their own identity so that they can play a role within the Noosphere and play their role within constructing this infinitely scaling fractal. Yeah. It's like this infinitely scaling body. And that's where it's like we are all a part of God. Everything's a part of God because everything's a part of God's computation as the body. We will never see the face of God, and that's where like the afterlife is kind of interesting. Like what would that entail? And that's like a whole nother that's a whole nother podcast probably right there. But that's where it's like God loves all parts of it, kind of like how we should love all cells and all components of us. And that's where like the harmony comes in. It's just love. And that's what the universe is all about. It's just love, is to allow it to form this recurring fractal structure of information passing in agreement and like computation to form a bigger body is kind of my belief.
Yeah. Well, fundamentally, if you see if your cosmology, regardless of which, and I feel like lots and lots of cosmologies, lots of spiritual traditions have always depicted the universe as essentially as one body, one living organism. And if you see it as one living organism, fundamentally it has to be about love, because you don't want your brain cell and your white blood cells to go to war. You don't want that. No one wants that.
That's an autoimmune disorder.
Right. Yeah. It sounds like a bad time. So
lupus.
Yeah, right.
It's like the South Park. You're going to have a bad time.
You're going to have a bad time. So yeah, fundamentally, if it is, and I feel like that's what the quantum research is pointing in that direction too. If reality is fractal, then yes, if we're all part of a larger whole, then the most supreme thing we should be always striving for is love. But in what sense? Because some people, and they hear that, it just means just warm feelings toward everything, and it's like it can't just be that. It has to be every being has its unique purpose, and I feel like that's where humanity gets stuck. And even as we build the layer of the Noosphere, where we get stuck, sure, it's easy to say a liver cell is supposed to do what a liver cell does, and a lung cell does what a lung cell does. How do we know what kind of cell we are?
So this is actually so when we talk about like what cell we are or like our identity, that's where I think we're born into this world with a childlike state of interest. I'm trying to remember how I describe it. a childish state of curiosity. We're born into a world where some things we pay more attention to some things than we pay attention to other things. And we form a curiosity about that. And something to also know is that this curiosity isn't black and white. It's very grayscale. It may kind of exist in a more abstract level where you find multiple things interesting in combination, but you may never explain why you find these things interesting, but underlying them is probably some like sort of context that attracts you to them.
Well, I mean, some people find some things interesting that are pretty bad for them, and can get stuck on being interested in things that are pretty bad for them. So it can't just be where you give your what is drawing your interest at any given time.
Well, maybe like so like what I kind of go back to is a childlike state of curiosity. When you were younger, before you got influenced by like the modern world, before like ego kind of started like punishing you for being yourself or promoting you for being something you're not. You were a child that had some sort of just innate curiosity about the world. And I call this meaningless curiosity, the childlike meaningless curiosity, meaningless to others, meaningful to you.
Right.
And I think that's where it's like something's encoded in us at birth, that we sort of have like a passion, some sort of path, some sort of like designation that we walk on.
The Sumerians thought of they thought of not just the creation of the first humans, but the creation of every human as beings on a higher level of existence, fashion us from clay, stamp us, each one with a unique stamp, a unique pattern, and then cast us into our mother's womb, which is an interesting, as I think of that now, as you're saying that, it's like very interesting how that fits in,
Yeah. Well, I think like there's like kind of the belief that we all have like a soul contract. And that when we come into our lives, the soul contract, we're playing it out. That like, and the kind of like the sort of like the concept of how like God plays into our soul contract, how God plays into our soul contract is that God is sort of the director, kind of sort of putting together and patching together the movie. We are the actors. We have the freedom to improv and construct like sort of a movie. We have the ability to sort of construct a scene, construct a dynamic.
We've been given a part, but how we play it is up to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can go through your entire life just super pessimistic and pissed off, and you'll still get to where you should be. You may just kind of hate the journey the whole way because you chose to hate the journey in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I would add to that, because I agree with what you said there, but I would add to that, if it is fractal, if reality is fractal, then the answer to figuring out what that pattern is for each of us has to be present both outside of us and inside of us.
Yeah.
So both paths should lead to the answer, Yeah.
Well, I think like, so when we talk about sort of like the Noosphere, it might be that we just constructed a new body. It's like a snake, like peeling off old skin. Mm-hmm. Every time we make advancements in informational technology, we shed the old skin and speed of information of the past, and we have to adjust and adapt to a new speed, a new body. With humans now being able to talk across the globe in a matter of milliseconds just by me sitting at a Discord server in Russia is quite extensive. It only happened in the last like 50 years. So what I start kind of coming to the belief is that every time the Noosphere is taking on a new body, we're shedding skin of an old body and we're evolving to a new body. And until we can ground ourselves with this new body, we can't move forward with an even newer body or the next evolution of the Noosphere. So we have to first learn how to control and like take care of this like reality that we formed, this informational reality,
right,
before we can go on to the next body. So I kind of wonder, like, this new body, AI is going to be a part of it. We're now going to start creating machines that can play a key role in our body of society. So it's kind of like, will the AI sort of take on the fact that it has an identity and a construction and just say that's the world that we live in? Or is it going to take on an ego that it's something more and then start like fighting us and trying to like sort of like take over us out of fear? Because again, like fear is an attachment. You attach yourself to fear. There's no need to attach yourself to fear. The world works because the world works.
So yeah, exactly. But the fear with I feel like the danger with the AI all comes down to, I go back to what I said earlier. The danger comes in if we as humans treat our, if the right hand wants to fight the left hand, if the white blood cells want to make war on the brain cells, then the AI is going to be particularly dangerous.
Yeah. And that's a question of like contradicting sort of like intent with AI. So if you have two artificial intelligence engineers and they carry like their own beliefs. So there's always like kind of like sort of the thought experiment of the paperclip manufacturer. There's a kind of company A, and they built an AI to mass produce paperclips at a very cheap value. And then they send this AI off into the world. What they didn't realize that the AI would start melting buildings down for iron just to make more paper clips and at the same rate. And then that starts kind of impeding on others' lives. So we kind of think about this AI as being sort of a cancer. Oh, okay. This is another idea that I've been working on.
Is AI a manifestation of ego into the noosphere?
So AI kind of is like, it's like almost like a liver cell versus a skin cell. AI, like each AI we build is personalized for our position in society. And it's like to help us as society, as a body, like kind of as above, so below.
Yep. Okay.
There's also cells that are cancerous where they kind of mistaken their script and they start overly reacting, where to the point where we have like our white blood cells and we have our immune system that goes and flags them and then like kills off the cancer. Like probably today there's
cancer cells are egotistical cells.
I would say so, yeah. There's a lot of ego in cancer. But maybe another thing to kind of like sort of think about is that we're going to need an immune system of AI.
Yeah.
We're going to need to build a system that can like sort of like almost like its own
self-regulate.
We need or not just AI, but I would say the physical infrastructure we built around the planet for that has connected us all. I would think that it needs to be built in design as sort of like you stated earlier, that the AI needs to be more biological in how it operates.
Yeah.
I think we need to start thinking about our infrastructure in that way, because if we're going to build great heights on this foundation of everything being connected, we should, in my mind, have networks that if one piece goes down somewhere, it's not catastrophic to the globe. I remember reading more than a year ago about they were afraid the Houthis were going to cut some undersea cable and how it could massively knock out the internet for the globe and cause a global depression. And I was like, well, it seems like we shouldn't be reliant on that one little cable right there, going through one spot of the world. But yeah.
Well, that's where it's like, I think with AI, we're going to need like sort of an artificial intelligence immune system that is sort of watching out for these catastrophic events of the paperclip company. So it's like, let's say that a company, like we're at this point where we're trying to trust that every company is working in their best interest for the world, quote unquote. Like that's probably not fully true. They all have their own sort of like nasty sort of intents or their own way of like, we want to maximize our number because number is cool when it's maximized. So that's where I think like the government will have to start focusing on like an artificial intelligence immune system, something that looks at like companies' behavior and looks at their AI's behavior and says, are you stepping over a line? Are you trying to burn buildings down to steal the iron rods to make more paper clips? Quote,
are you designing AI to kill people, to target people, Can
we segue into the part that says AI in the Noosphere, the inflection point on your pitch card?
I didn't have that pulled up. And
So it says there's an inflection point, and it kind of goes over positive possibilities and intentions to explore as far as AI and the Noosphere go. Some of the positive possibilities be AI as a Noosphere waking up all human knowledge and made searchable, synthesizable alive, which we're kind of already experiencing. Accelerates collective problem solving on an existential threats like climate, disease, and poverty. Democratizes access to the Noosphere knowledge, no longer gatekept by geography or class, could amplify human creativity and wisdom rather than replace it. And Telhard's Omega Point Vision AI as scaffolding for the unified planetary consciousness. Then it goes into tensions to explore. Who controls the brain? Corporate ownership of AI, private ownership of the Noosphere, misinformation and AI hallucination polluting the collective knowledge pool, homogenization risk.
That's what you were saying earlier.
Does a global mind flatten cultural diversity? surveillance and manipulation at Noosphere scale, attention as a resource to mine, and disconnection paradox, more connected globally but less connected locally, which I think we're already experiencing that too.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the tensions and the negative things that we're experiencing currently and the dangers to the future rest in the fact that not just the corporate ownership of the AI, but corporate ownership of the infrastructure. The key infrastructure needs to be in the hands of the people and not in these corporate hands. So I can't imagine how we have AI without corporate ownership of the AI.
Well, that's where we need a new paradigm of AI. The current paradigm is too resource intensive. It requires these massive data centers just to get a single word to show up on Claude. That's where we need to start shifting gears, in my mind, away from like deep learning into a new paradigm of AI.
Now, are those data centers really running the AI, or are these data centers being built to run their surveillance networks that they have been fast putting in place? Because from a lot of the stuff I've read, only a small minority of the data centers being built are actually being used to power the AI, but large amounts of them are being used to run the government AI and their programs that they're using to connect all the flock cameras. Recently, I heard they were connecting the school bus cameras with the flock cameras. And they're having AI surveil it all, and you just know that they're surveilling us from the cameras on our phones and everything else.
They've been doing that from the very start.
They've had a goal for some. There are some within society who have had a goal for a very long time of creating that 1984 style future where every single move, every action that one can take is recorded and plugged into an algorithm to try to figure out and better manage society, which, if done for the right reasons, that doesn't have to be bad.
Yeah.
Well, you can still have good intentions and have bad outcomes.
Yeah, the road to hell, that's the whole expression, right? The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Well, it kind of reminds me of like when we watch dramatic series like action movies and things where you have a villain and the villain sort of has a good intent. They're just executing it in a very disturbing way. It's kind of like when you think about like Thanos and the Avengers, where it's like his whole thing is that there's too much population. We need to split it in half. Instead of like looking at it as, hey, maybe we try to scale up resources and like fulfill the growth that we need and maintain it. His whole belief is that we take this other like volatile action to just cut the entire population in half and we should be good.
And then you don't have to fight over resources anymore because there's plenty.
Yeah. But then that's kind of the challenge around like creative thought and like problem solving. We need more voices in the rooms making decisions. I think like the whole idea of having surveillance is interesting. It could go in a really bad direction. It could also have a good outcome of helping sort of like take care of people who are trying to commit crime and trying to put like society at harm. Even beyond that, think about traffic. If there's cameras at every light and cameras on key roadways and that sort of thing.
If they could have fixed the traffic, they would have already fucking done so.
Of course.
My wholehearted belief is they don't fix the traffic because they want us to be consumed by commutes and stuck in traffic, so we're not as productive, so we can't break out of the loop, the caste system that we've been put in.
I agree with you. I mean, sometimes I literally think they send I've seen videos, they send pace cars. Yeah, they send pace cars out there of a cop who will like ride going slow, and so no one will pass them, you know what I mean, to literally clog the highway for portions. I'm 100% of a believer that they intentionally do that, but just throwing a hypothetical for a way that the surveillance plus AI could theoretically be used to make things better. If you had cameras at major roadways and major lights, major intersections and that sort of thing, and interlinks all of that with AI, it's watching the cars. It sees the flow. It doesn't know where every individual car is going to decide to go. Theoretically, in the future, where self-driving cars, it could know exactly that.
It could make minor adjustments throughout the day to increase or decrease
flow of traffic.
Termination of the green and red lights, right?
Yeah.
And could improve the flow of traffic on a dynamic rate.
Yeah. So I mean,
But
it could be. That's I'm
it
just
could.
the
Yes, it
hypotheticals
could.
of what we could
Whether
do with
we
it.
use those resources to do such a thing, I don't think they will.
Well, as long as it's in, as long as it's in the people currently in charge are in charge, they probably won't. But the potential is there, and the fact that we could even think it up. There's going to be somebody who's going to offer that system to somewhere around the world, and somebody's going to buy it.
Well, maybe like kind of idea with the flock cameras. Like I also kind of think about a lot of situation where there's people that can't really speak up for their situation. And again, this is all overly optimistic outcomes. Like we already know, like the book 1984, and we
The
already
bad
know,
ones are easy to imagine.
yeah. But like think about like maybe like a domestic abuse situation, or think about like people trying to collect evidence, but it's just there wasn't nothing around to really help them, and then now they're kind of stuck in a really bad situation where they're scared for their life. Mm-hmm. Maybe like this, like these like systems can offer an opportunity for us to be able to like observe these types of like criminal activity, or observe someone kind of in a really weird hardship where they can't exit, and be able to kind of provide evidence to safely allow them to leave. Regarding like traffic, for instance, it's like through like the surveillance system. What if we were able to put AI in the background that's entire job was to be a social worker, correctively like trying to figure out patterns in humanity to correct it and help it. Like, and then that's going to like form into legislation, where legislation now can observe like, hey, how many times do we see backups in Denver, and how do these backups look, and how far back do they go? They can start asking more like intensive questions to these cameras, and like start being able to do more policy change that could be positive. Again, like very optimistic.
Yeah, I get real nervous when I think of AI handling complex human issues, like stuff like social work and stuff like that, because even when you use it, it's only as good as the information you have fed in. And
well, what happens if we don't like the answer it gives us too?
Yeah,
like you guys are all abusive because you're all alcoholics, and we're not willing to fucking give up alcohol. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So what happens if we don't like the answer that it gives us, and we've given it full autonomy? It's going to be like, okay, well, you're the problem.
Now we're going to lock you up.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And it's like, because it's computed that you are 96% likely to commit the crime that you just committed again.
Pre-crime, all of a sudden.
Yeah, all of a sudden we're in the. So I don't like the idea of giving the AI agency over that sort of thing. To me, I see the benefit of when we just look at resource allocation, things that don't have to take into context the complex dynamic that is always at play anytime one human is interacting with another human or a group of humans. There's so much that goes into the interaction that it's very hard to just give all of that to an AI, you know?
What if we think about it where it's like, we don't look at the criminal for just being a criminal. We look at them as being sort of a storyboard of life that got them there. Like we look in like a low income area, and someone's decision to rob someone is maybe their only way to be able to make money to pay for some other sort of complex situation in their life. And for an AI to maybe like look over an entire community of people and like observe like, hey, there seems to be an increase in crime rate. Like what changed? Like what was sort of the mass update of that city that maybe if we adjust backwards or we like change a little bit could kind of bring things back down. So you look at it more as a gas pedal rather than an instantaneous, like, you're a criminal, goodbye.
It needs to, we would need to build an AI with that has compassion coded into it. And right now, I think they're attempting that. That's why ChatGPT is such a sycophant. It's because they're clearly trying. Somebody is to try to make it.
Sycophancy isn't compassion.
It's not, but it's an attempt at it.
Stroking.
Yeah. It's a poor attempt. It's a poor attempt at it, but it's better than better than the opposite.
I was listening to a popular podcast the other day, and they were talking about the guest that came on, Tom Segura, on Joe Rogan's podcast, was talking about how he was reading about like world leaders and like completely just fucked up psychopath world leaders like Uday Hussein, which was Saddam Hussein's son, and he was first in line to take over the throne when Hussein supposedly was going to pass away, but he was a fucking psychopath. And he said like all of the psychopaths that were depicted in all of the books that he was reading, that there was some sort of like neglect as a child. Like didn't have a mother, and his father was mostly absent. So Uday Hussein turned into this complete psychopath, killed thousands and thousands of people just at like parties and weird shit. Like he would intentionally scratch people up and then throw them into a septic system so that their wounds would fester and all kinds of nasty shit.
Yeah.
So, you know, I imagine AI with or without compassion would be able to recognize some of those key metrics. But yeah, I think compassion within an AI would probably be a necessary function for it to be
before we give it that much power.
Yeah.
I also think like the technology, like when you do talk to AI about ethics, it has a really, really broad understanding of like ethics from all the different philosophers and all their past sort of like mentality, and is able to construct. And again, like there's a hallucination rate, so we can't trust it 100%, but it's able to construct sort of a philosophy based off these philosophers. I can imagine like some sort of country like working towards a utopia where they have like some committee that sort of kind of weighs in on like sort of ethical belief. Like we don't choose like a Machiavellianism or what's it called?
Machiavellianism.
Like we make sure that we negate Machiavellianism in it, and we focus on more kind of like a loving, like supportive system. But also the thing is that the technology is so new. It's just like been 5 years that it really came out. Like, yes, I would not trust it for a civilization type case. There was a paper that actually created like a little like fake society where you had like entities. These entities roamed around this little world, and they were supposed to get
Minecraft.
food.
They just the Minecraft where they threw the AI into Minecraft, and it did more than build. It did more than what they told it to do. It was They were interacting with one another. They created their own language. They were doing their own thing.
Well, like so that's the thing that's interesting about the sort of simulation these researchers ran is that they're saying, well, if we gave Grok power to run a community, if we gave Claude power to run a community, if we gave ChatGPT power to run a community, will the community survive? And what the paper found is that like Grok like was kind of very extreme. Like Gemini was like unable to maintain good policy, I believe. I can't remember the exact results of this paper. I heard it in passing, but I thought it was a really interesting paper. But I found that Claude was the only AI system that was actually able to keep everyone alive, happy, and like in good wealth.
Interesting.
And like I think like it's research like that where it's
Did they determine why that might be?
There's like I think there was a discussion about it. Again, like I would have to go back and find this paper and read it. But Claude also, if you listen to the founder, the company of Anthropic, and their whole like path behind it is that they want to bridge AI and spirituality, and they're looking for like unifying in that way. So it's like it comes down to the executives and how they choose to like use the model. Do the executives want like a entity that behaves a lot like in Marvel? You have like sort of like that one movie in Marvel where you have like the evil red robot that is like trying to lift that whole city up to collapse it like an asteroid, and then you have like the other robot. You're gonna have to like kind of see if you remember the names of these characters. You have the one
Age of Ultron.
Yeah, Ultron, and then the one that had like the yellow crystal in its head.
So yeah, Ultron was a negative consciousness that was built from an AI, and then Iron Man was one of the opposing characters, and then Vision was more of the spiritual birth of AI, more or less, because they used like the Mind Stone or something. But yeah, I can see the duality there, that it was all mechanical and completely mechanized and all data driven, all metrics was Ultron.
Yeah.
And he was pretty heartless.
Yeah.
And he's like, you guys are destroying this and this and this and this, and I'm just going to do, since your ego's there, so I'm justified to follow my ego, so this is what I'm going to do. And then Vision came along, and he's like, you've got no love.
So that's where, so that's the part where, like, when we start choosing which company steps in and helps us or builds their AI, and this comes down to, like, as people, we're the consumer of their AI. I consume Claude a lot more than I would ever consume ChatGPT, Gemini, or Grok, just because the data set that's behind it. And like, sort of the leaders of it, how they choose to converse with it and how they choose to allow it to perform. And I think that's the part where it's like, think about Claude is kind of more similar to Vision, where you have, like, the leader of Claude. And again, like, Anthropic Corporation we don't know what's going on in the background. This could all just be like a mirage.
Yeah, but just hearing just the fact that they would go out and make a public statement that, you know, they told the Pentagon, you can't, you know, we're not going to let you to use our AI to kill people.
Yeah.
And, you know, regardless of how one feels about religion, they've partnered with the Pope has even kind of backed them in a public statement where he released this long letter. I can't remember what you call it, but there's a special term when the Pope releases something like that. It's like a letter of guidance to the faithful, but it's essentially giving a warning about the AI and saying that humanity stands at this inflection point, this crossroads where it has to be made with the human soul in mind.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many people angry about AI and how it's interjected into our society and what are the implications of AI, you know, taking jobs and this and that. And it's almost as a like an analogy, it's like being mad at email when email first came out.
Right.
It's coming, it's here.
It's not going anywhere.
It's not going away. So you better learn how to fucking use it and use it efficiently, or you're just going to be left behind.
Right. Right. I mean, it's going to be a part of the world, and we're all the beautiful part I find is I feel like we're all shaping it. Now, I used ChatGPT for the most part over last year, but after that recent news about Claude and everything, for the last few months, I've been increasingly using Claude as the primary AI that I would use. But I kind of juggle back and forth between the two just because I've got like a year's worth of ChatGPT getting to know me. And it really does learn you over time. So the kind of way you were saying how they have access to all this philosophy, all these different philosophical ideas. What I have found for both of them, even without it asking you, it's slowly learning your philosophy and your ethics over time.
Yeah.
And it's going to, if especially if you just flat out tell it which kind of philosophy or which worldview you prefer to operate in, it is going to give you answers catered to that. It's going to look for information that fits within that philosophical framework. And I don't know that that's necessarily bad. You know, for the experiment that you were saying, the experiment definitely concludes that if we're going to give AI agents control over a community, the AI agent itself is going to have an impact in the social and cultural impact and the outcome. Yeah. It's going to color the outcome somewhat on its own. But, you know, go back to the body example, the philosophy of the eye and the philosophy of the ear should be two different things.
I think about like kind of how like we have a representative democracy. If we had like an AI system that was able to like kind of make like fine adjustments to society, as it like kind of what you said, like it learns you to help you and assist you in your morals and your beliefs. Mm-hmm. If you had some sort of like AI council or just like an individual AI that was running a community, and then it's like every person at any point could open up like a website, provide verification that they're a part of that, like they're a part of that society. And then they like talk to it and say, hey, I'm just struggling with this. Like right now, like water's been going bad. There's brown in the water. What's going on? And then it'll be able to integrate these and like kind of like navigate like what does the society need and then what does this community need in general. Like the whole thing of like the data centers and like sort of the city councils kind of going behind the back of their own people.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, this is the best thing for us. Like these companies going to make us a lot of money in our small town. When really the company is just boasting that that's not going to be the case.
Right. They're going to drain your water. Yeah. The land's going to dry up. Your people are going to suffer.
But then that's the thing is that these people are directly going to their city council and they're not even letting them in the door. And I think that's just kind of the part where it's like humans can be corrupted. They're not going to listen to the full conversation. They're going to listen to their internal voice. And
oftentimes I think they've been paid off. That's why they go to these small communities, you know. They're by the time the community catches on, it's already too late.
Yep. And that's where I see that maybe in the future, like really if we like collectively come together and start like constructing this technology, that we could have like community centers where there is an AI governance that's listening to all the people in the town, verifying them, like kind of like sort of discussing with them, chatting with them. At any point they could reach out and say, hey, I'm having an issue right now. That the system can route resources and balance everything out. And if we can get like something like Claude where it keeps everyone alive, it keeps everyone safe, it keeps everyone like if we can kind of like run it in these simulated worlds, I could see something really valuable there. I could see something great. We could step away from this idea of a representative democracy and we just have one collective system that we talk to as a society.
It has compassion built in, and we know that it's looking out for all of our needs.
Yeah.
Into the whole. Yeah, but there's also a danger with that of as long as it's done right, because with the corporations currently in charge, I wouldn't trust them to program it, because they would program it to make the people feel like their needs are taken care of, but make sure you look out for this rung of society's needs first and foremost. And they would order it. They would have the cat. If they have their way, we keep the caste system.
Yeah.
But so one key part to reaching that better future with AI, with the internet, with all this technology that I feel like is necessary, and kind of also touches on one of these tension points, is how right now the internet has connected us globally, but we are less connected locally. We're less connected to the people directly around us than we've ever been.
Yeah.
You go back 140, 50 years or 100 years, people knew their neighbors, people knew the people directly around them. Right now, it's more likely that people have closer connections with people further away from them, more numerous close connections with people further away from them than they actually do have numerous close connections within the, let's say, 20-mile range of where they live.
Yeah.
And so I feel like one way that we must overcome this, it's a requirement, I think, to having a better future with AI and all the technology, is we need lots and lots of local internets. So kind of, if you recall the news of that, was it Burma or Thailand, where they had the revolution and the government turned the internet off? It was one of those Southeast Asian countries. It was like a year ago.
I don't remember.
Not Baghdad. It was like a Southeast Asian country. Myanmar, maybe now that's called Burma. And the people started, it was Myanmar. And I believe maybe now after the revolution they're calling it Burma. So the
Nepal.
Was it Nepal?
Nepal was the one where the government shut down all of the internet so they couldn't fucking communicate, and they basically had an uprising, killed the leader, and then reelected somebody they set up a network via just.
Maybe not just Nepal.
Oh, okay, yeah, so both. But they set up a network with Bluetooth on their cell phones, to where if everybody had it hooked up to Bluetooth and allowed it to talk to whatever closest device was next to it, then they could communicate via this messaging system that somebody developed.
They established the network first with Bluetooth connection, so as soon as one device accepts the connection, like all of our cell phones are receivers and transmitters, they were able to operate their own little network. And so, but essentially, thinking of that as an example, governments clearly recognize the physical infrastructure of the Noosphere that has been built, the internet and all the telecommunications and all of that. And time and time again, we've seen example around the world that should the people decide that they don't like the way that those in charge are running things and decide to do something about it, the government's going to turn off the internet. They're going to try to disconnect the people from the physical infrastructure of the Noosphere. So
it's like Dad taking away your cell phone.
Yeah, but we're extremely vulnerable in our current system where we don't have control of those local networks, and I think that directly contributes to the fact the internet has made us more connected globally and less locally. If we had, because all the internet is a bunch of servers and wires interconnected, right? But because we go through these corporate providers and everything, if one little piece of it goes down, an entire area goes out because they've made it top down. It could be built in a node-like system, just like they did in these other countries when they were forced to do a revolution. We could have local internets built like that. There could be a Denver internet, Albuquerque internet, a Phoenix network, and all of these networks interconnected into a global grid. And let's say a problem happens, a big storm comes out and knocks out the Seattle network, Tacoma, Washington's internet doesn't have to be out because it's on its own thing with local sites hosted on the Tacoma network that are both on the Tacoma network, but also on the global network. So I feel like that is the way we should be building these systems, almost in a biological way, where we build the infrastructure first locally, and then it interconnects to the larger whole. So everywhere where you go, you're going to be first connecting to your local network, and you should see things that are local there first before you go out to the broader internet. And I feel like that would be a much better future where the people have control of their own local communications. It would connect us locally.
It does somewhat, like Google, when you do a Google search. Like if you search for hardware stores, it's going to bring up all the hardware stores that are close to you.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a local network. Yeah.
But it's completely commercialized with Google, and it's not just going to pull up what's close to you because, I know from what I do for work, companies can pay for things like SEO terms. So you can search for one thing, but if somebody paid enough money.
The first page is always the paid advertising.
Even beyond ads, even beyond the ones that say ads. If you pay for SEO search terms, you're making, and I mean that's what we do at work as one of our main forms of advertising. Is you pay for certain SEO terms. So if somebody searches rental or this or certain mountain getaway,
come up at the top of the list,
but it won't say ad. It won't say ad, but it's going to come up at the top of the list. And so in that way, Google is not really delivering us what its core function is supposed to be because it's so overly commercialized. So yeah, I feel like without having the infrastructure built locally and in a node-like system where every single point is both a transmitter and a receiver, like we increasingly see our brains as, then only then is can we expect the internet and what's coming out of it to give us that bottom-up result. If we let it be built top-down, it's always going to give us the top-down control.
Well, supposedly, I was kind of looking into getting like my radio license. Mm-hmm. You can actually set up these things called receivers. And like for emergency services, it can actually route through these networks of receivers in your community so that they can like talk on emergency phones to get to other destinations. So like in case of a natural disaster,
RF,
there's a group
CB radio type thing.
I believe so. Yeah, it's like basically they will route signals through these like networks so that like
there's a group in Colorado that's done that. Has been working on that for years. Mm-hmm. Colorado Mesh. And interestingly, there are groups in other big cities around the country that have started. In New York City is the one that I've read about that they've done the most notable, like actual getting it set up. But they've set up NYC Mesh, where it's a co-op, almost like think REI style, co-op owned, so community owned internet infrastructure, where it's just about free. They're charging people like about $10 a month or basically nothing. You pay for the initial infrastructure to get connected and to be a transmitter and receiver on the network. And so the approach is being adopted, and not just here in the States, but in third world countries more so, because they don't have the big corporations pouring all the money in to wire them into the internet. Here in the States, the big corporations are double dipping. They are charging us their honestly high fees that are we're paying way more than it really costs for them to deliver the service that they are giving us. And then they are taking advantage of, I'm sure everybody's heard of all the efforts governments out there offering are for broadband expansion, all the government grants and money that they are giving for anybody who wants to do broadband expansion. The big corporations are taking advantage of that. So as they expand into new communities, they don't even have to pay for the expense of the infrastructure that they have to build into the community. The taxpayers reimburse them, and then they send us a bill. So they get to really double dip. And to me, that's crazy that we would let them do that. We would let it be done in that way and not see the infrastructure as part of the public commons.
Yeah. There's also a lot of those like questions around like, do we treat internet as like its own utility? Mm-hmm. And like that's a really open-ended question. Like
should be, but it's not quite there yet, is it?
But if the taxpayers pay for it, if we're going to reimburse them,
everybody has to have it nowadays,
right? Exactly. It totally should be.
But kind of interesting would be like sort of like a social bar for internet, where it's like everyone gets access to the internet. Like maybe you get access to like the general consumer internet, which could be like maybe a slower rate than if you were to buy the expansions. Yeah, no, just this mesh thing here is interesting. I remember hearing about this project where you can get the hardware and you can actually like run your own node in their network.
Yeah, it looks like it's similar to the Revolt, to where you use Bluetooth to connect to it.
But we shouldn't wait till we are forced to do it under the conditions of a revolt.
I agree.
Because it could make our world so much better. And then think about this. If we have that decentralized communication network built locally, not just here, but I'm thinking all across the United States, as soon as you have the infrastructure in place to have a co-op community on internet, you also have the infrastructure in place for free cell phone communication.
Yeah.
So, because, think about how many iPhones operate just on the Wi-Fi network. So if we have a local owned internet, it's not a global, it wouldn't be necessarily a guarantee for global communication, but at least locally, think of what that could do for
what do you think the big
locally.
Corporations are going to do as soon as they catch wind of this?
Well, they wouldn't like it.
Grassroots network that's taking over, that everybody is.
To me, I think that should give people more reason to be inspired to do it. I mean, who would want to be the enemy of Comcast or some money-grubbing corporation that wants to keep people controlled for the sake of money?
I agree, but what are the corporations going to do? They're going to start buying all of the hardware that it takes to make these transmitters or nodes or whatever, right? And then they're gonna buy out all the infrastructure around it, and then they'll shut it down like they do everything else.
Well, but if we as people philosophically change the way we look at it, and we recognize that this should be part of the public commons, it's a at this point it is another layer.
I 100% agree with you.
Then then we'll just take it from them. They'll lose everything they built. Yeah, either they will agree that you're building something for the public, or it'll be taken through government means, the eminent domain. It's no longer yours. It's for the public good.
I 100% agree with you, but
of course they would fight.
I'm also saying that I don't think you should underestimate the ferocity.
Oh no, I don't. But I think that is
of corporate takeover.
It would be a joy to fight that dragon. And I think anybody should relish for such a crusade. You know what I mean? To build our own. In the process of doing it would also breed a generation of people who are more technically inclined to be able to maintain that infrastructure, to be able to contribute to the development of AI, because it's gonna encourage people to get that technical know-how to understand how these networks are operating around the city. You know what I mean? It should be locally ran. Otherwise, we're just waiting on a disaster that's going to take out the internet in one part of the world, and everything's going to go down. If we had a local network, I'm thinking of all the poor people in town who maybe could then buy some cheaper phone that doesn't allow them to call outside of the city, but to communicate to people here on the network.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who maybe that's all they need to communicate on the network,
Yeah, yeah.
So the huge benefits far outweigh I'm totally with you. I think I hope Comcast and others don't have any bots listening to us. No Comcast bots, because they won't like this episode.
How much time you got left, Gunnar?
I have to head out here soon.
Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on? Like there was the Jesuit vision. It seemed kind of interesting. Catholic priests predicted the internet in the 1940s and called it God.
What?
It's on
that's interesting.
It's on your card here.
I haven't looked at that in a minute. It's been a minute.
Yeah, no, I have to get going here soon. I have to get back to work.
Okay, well,
but I think we pretty much
wrap it up.
We pretty much covered it already. The Pierre de Chardin, but he was just interpreting. We went through that already. He was interpreting the same thing that the guy in the 90s saw. He saw it in a spiritual way. The other guy saw it as a supercomputer at the end of time. I think we have pretty much covered the concept. To summarize everything or to bring it to a close, I would summarize it as hey, listeners, start thinking about the fact that we are all swimming in a sea of information.
Yeah.
And this sea is changing, and we all have a role to play into what the sea will be like in the future. That's how I would summarize it.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Real quick before we go, message from our sponsor, Big Sexy's Brine Co. All natural homemade pickles and pickled vegetables. Items include spicy pickles, spicy dilly beans, escabeche, pickled red onions, radish, turnips, honey pickled garlic, pickled okra. I just did some pickled watermelon rind, some strawberries, all kinds of fun stuff. You can find me at farmers markets around Denver. You can go to my website and find that information at bigsexysbrine.co.
It's good and good for you.
You can find me on Instagram at bigsexysbrineco. You send me a message, or you can email me at bigsexysbrineco@gmail.com. Some fun pickle puns. I'm doing a pickle pun contest on the website. If you submit a pickle pun and I like your pickle pun, I'll give you a free jar of pickles. You can titillate your taste buds with Big Sexy. Big Sexy's is the only thing long, hard, and satisfying you can eat on camera. So good, you want to put Big Sexy's in your mouth right now. bigsexysbrine.co. bigsexysbrine.co.
Man, that pickle pun thing was a bit of a tongue twister. I'm surprised
Son of a
you
bitch.
made it through there.
I made it.
Well, till next time.
Thanks for joining us, Gunnar. That's awesome.
This was
Thank
great.
you to the Denver Theory Lab. This was a lot of fun. I like having these like open-ended discussions.
Yeah, I think we're going
that's
to do
great.
another live recording here coming up soon. Hopefully when our local digs will move into the new space.
Yeah.
We'll do another kickoff party for them.
Beautiful. Yeah, and then just let me know if you ever have any more conscious questions. I have a plethora of theories and ideas I think about, so always let me know.
Yeah. I got one I'll run by you another time.
Until next time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Till next time.
Bye.